Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So I'm breaking down the Folds of Honor Quiktrip 500 at Atlanta Motor Speedway on Sunday, March 21st at around 3 p.m. Eastern. And we're done with the little West Coast swing NASCAR was having in the deserts at Phoenix and Las Vegas. And we're moving back out east to tackle 500 miles at Atlanta Motor Speedway, which is a very rough, abrasive track. So it's going to eat up those tires. So I know a lot of people don't get too excited for the mile and a half tracks, but Atlanta's rough surface does make it a little bit more interesting than other tracks because it does have an extra element to it. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure you guys are as well. And if you find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like. The more you guys interact with my content, leaving likes, leaving comments, and all that fun stuff, it's going to help push my video out to more people in the YouTube world. And the more people that see it, the more it helps me out. So I do appreciate that. My NASCAR community does an awesome job interacting with my content. So again, appreciate you guys and give yourself a pat on the back for that. And if you haven't already, if you're new or if you're just a frequent visitor of the channel and you haven't done it yet for some reason, I'm not sure why you wouldn't, but hit that subscribe button. We're getting close to 8K subscribers, and if we could hit that before baseball season starts in a few weeks, that would be amazing. And you guys know I love baseball, so I'll be grinding that out each and every single day, so we have that to look forward to on top of all the NASCAR content. So a lot of stuff's going to be coming out on the channel, and I am looking forward to it. If you don't follow me over on social media, I'm at Pennell16 on Twitter and CPen16 over on IG. And if you help support the channel over on Patreon, always much appreciated. Link is down below for that. It's only $10 a month. I'll throw something on the screen right about now so you know exactly what you get access to. But there's a ton of extra content on there and that I work very hard on throughout the week. You guys make it possible for me to do this full time, so I do appreciate that. We have several hundred members over there, so if you want to join the community, hop to the Discord chat it up with us. It's kind of like an extended version of the live streams, but it's every single day, every single point of the day, throughout the entire week. So if you want to join the community, like I said, links down below. But you get access to the entire spreadsheet, which has a ton of stuff in there. Like, this is a very loaded spreadsheet. Also the articles that I do every single week, and like I said, the Discord chat. But you get the projections, which, not to brag, but they did kind of smash last week. Because if you were looking at the lug nut contest, I posted this on Twitter, but I know a lot of you probably don't get on Twitter. But 6 out of the top 10 spots in the lug nut contest were people either on this Patreon site, my Discord chat, or in the YouTube comments. We kind of took over the top 10 there. I actually had a few lineups in the top 10 until the Cole Custer debacle happened, but we'll save that for later. But yeah, it was a pretty good week. So if you want the projections, they're on there, power rankings, GP driver exposures, so you know exactly where I'm going. I cannot be more transparent than that because I play in the 150 max contest. So if you know my exact exposures and you want to switch from there, I feel free to. That's kind of what they're there for. The cheat sheet, green flag speed ratings, which is sortable by all track types. So high tire wear tracks, low tire wears, mile and a half, short tracks, aero package differences, whatever. You want to sort it by whatever. It is all on there. I use that a lot since we don't have practice anymore these days. It's something I've been leaning on heavily the past year or so now. The heat map, the optimal lineups, a bunch of stuff on there, even aero package schedules. So if you want access to all that, like I said, link is down below for what I think is a very fair price for all the work that I put into it. And also, one more thing before we get into the preview of this race. I do want to mention that I did partner with Monkey Knife Fight to be able to provide you guys this promo code to use over on their site, which I will link down in the description below. It's got the monkey emoji next to it, so I don't think you're going to be able to miss it. But it's a fun site to play on. There's no salary cap restrictions or anything like that. You can bet on drivers scoring over or under a certain amount of points in head-to-head matchups as well. So if you want to try it out, use code CPEN, which is in the, I believe, the top left-hand corner of this screen, and you'll get a free money bonus up to $50. You don't have to deposit $50. If you deposit $25, you can get $25 instantly, but I think you get the point. So if you want to try it out, again, use the link down below and use code CPEN over on Monkey Knife Fight and tell them I sent you. And with that being said, guys, that's it for the shameless plugs. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. And as per usual, we're going to mention a few things before we get into the preview of this race. So if you want to know when I'm going to be live this weekend, I can throw something on the screen to give you my entire schedule. But if you just want to hear me say it, if you're not looking at the screen, I'll be live on my own channel right here, right where you're watching right now at 11 a.m. Eastern on Sunday. Then I'll be live on the Awesemo Live Before Lock NASCAR show with Jason Floyd and myself at around 2 p.m. Eastern. I think that could either change to 2:30 depending on when DraftKings moves its lock time to, but it should be around 2 p.m. Eastern on Sunday if you want to follow me over there after we do our own live stream over here. So that's the live stream schedule for this weekend. And also the big thing, if you want to join the DraftKings contest that I host each and every single week, it's just a fun way for me to interact with you guys and see who's building good lineups each and every single week and compete against you guys, and you can win some money as well, which I know everyone likes to do. Just comment your DK username down below. The first 99 people that comment their name and accept the invite, you will get entered into the contest as long as you hit that accept button when I send you that invite. So check it out if you want. It's always a pretty fun time every single week. But I do want to shout out the winners, so if you ever want a chance to get a shout out on the channel, all you gotta do is finish on the podium in this contest. Pays out the top 3 guys, but I want to give the shout outs right now. and I'll throw it on the screen, but coming in first place by a decent margin of around 12 points, Colts fan 1881. I know he's in my Discord chat, and he was pretty happy about taking on the contest, so shout out to you, Colts fan. You had a pretty good lineup. And Sir Buttered Toast, he came in second place. I think that's a new name, so shout out to him. And then Don Jorge 1800. I know he's been here for quite some time. He rounded up the podium, finishing in third place. And just on the bubble, we had Big Wig Buster and then D Chaput. I'm not sure how to say your last name. I apologize, but I do know you're in the Discord chat and you have been for quite some time, so I do appreciate you. And he got 5th place. Then Pat's Dynasty, who's also in the Discord chat, he finished in 6th. So shout out to the people who were in the top 3 this week and also the people on the bubble. You were very, very close. Just couldn't quite sneak in there, but I wish you guys all the best of luck this week. And I think that's it for all the extra stuff, housekeeping things we got to do. So let's get into the preview portion of this race finally. So this is the Folds of Honor Quiktrip 500, like stated earlier. This is the outline of the track. It's a D-shaped oval. It's Atlanta Motor Speedway. It's a 1.5-mile high tire wear intermediate track, and it's a very, very abrasive track. And I'll actually throw something on the screen that I found from watching last year's video, but Jeff Gordon actually tried to describe it as the tires were cheese, and then they're driving on a cheese grater, and then they put it in nachos. But I thought it was a pretty good analogy. So yeah, the tires get absolutely eaten alive here. Fresh tires are super, super important. We're talking if guys stay out, I mean, it's just a bad strategy because guys on fresh tires are going to make up that time very, very quick. It's 1.5 miles in length. And this is the longest race that we've had so far in terms of amount of laps that we've had, 325 laps, which means close to 230 total Dominator points. So last week was the most laps we've had all season at 312. I believe that was the correct number. And I said Dominators were going to be very, very important because of that. Now we have even more laps, which is not too many more laps, but we still have more laps. So Dominator points, once again, a premium this week. We have to roster Dominators. If you're just playing strictly place differential, that's not going to be good enough unless just all the guys starting in the top 10 happen to crash out, which is just not a very, very likely scenario by any means at a 1.5-mile track. So we want Dominators pretty much 2 to 3 in all of your lineups, but you can stretch that to 4 this week, as crazy as that sounds. But when I did my first 100 projections and uploaded to Fantasy Cruncher and hit Optimize, I ran the top 3 lineups, and the 2 were 3 Doms plus a place differential guy, but actually the third one I got was a 4 Dominator lineup using a couple of 5K guys, and it actually did not look that bad. I'm not talking guys like BJ McLeod or anything like that. Actually, 2 of the decent 5K drivers. So it's possible to stretch it to 4 Dominators this week. So I would say anywhere from 2 to 4 Dominators in all of your lineups this week. And that's kind of it for the preview. It's still a 1.5-mile track, so nothing any out of the ordinary strategy-wise. So I guess that's pretty much all I got to say for this. So let's get into the driver-by-driver breakdown portion of this video, which I know is everyone's favorite part. And the one thing I'll say about the overall pricing this week is that it's pretty soft. Like, you can make whatever lineup you want. You are not constricted by making lineups. Usually we have drivers getting close to the $12,000 range. And this week we're capped at $11,000 with Kevin Harvick. And then down low we have some decent cheap options. And there's a lot of really cheap Dominators in this 9K range. Like, I can see myself living in this 9K range to make things work this week. So I'm looking forward to it, actually. I think we can make some really fun lineups. And like I was talking earlier, you can make a 4 Dominator lineup without getting into that BJ McLeod, Joey Gase range. So it should be a fun week. I am very excited for it. But we'll start up top with the man in Atlanta, Kevin Harvick at $11,000, the most expensive driver on the slate, starting 7th. But it's certainly deserved despite his slow start to the season. I know he's not dominating, but it's not like he's awful. He just hasn't been his usual Harvick dominating self. But anytime NASCAR heads to Atlanta, we have to talk about Kevin Harvick. It would just be irresponsible not to mention Kevin Harvick as a play here because he is an absolute god. I mean, 108.2 DraftKings points scored per race here at Atlanta. That's like 50 points ahead of the guy in second, which is Trudex at 64 points. An average finish of 3.8, running position of 3.1, a driver rating of close to 135, with the second best again being Truex at 113.9. 2 wins, 4 top 5s, 152.7 laps led. That's insane. That's like 50% of the laps available to lead at Atlanta the past few years, and Kevin Harvick has pretty much led over half of those laps. Like, it's insane how good Kevin Harvick is. I just realized you guys can't see that on the screen, but look for yourselves. 152.7 laps led per race with over 100 laps led last year. 52.3 fast laps. Finished first last year, the 2020, I guess it was the summer race, not the spring race. It's usually in the spring. And then 4th in 2019. Then first once again in 2018. Then at these track types, obviously it's going to pull a lot of these numbers from last year. And for Kevin Harvick last year, you know, in the early and middle portion, then at the very end of their season, he kind of fell off a little bit, which is the only concern with Kevin Harvick, because if Kevin Harvick has came out strong so far this season at $11,000, I realize it's a bit expensive, but we would be looking at him as we got to lock and load him because it's Kevin Harvick at Atlanta. But I'm not so sure that's the case, because I think there's other guys that are more likely to dominate in this race other than Kevin Harvick. Now, the recent track history for him is great to look at, and he really knows how to hook that bottom line in Atlanta, which no one else can really do. They call it a Harvicking at Atlanta. He's got his own verb at a track. I mean, that's how you know how good you are at a certain track if you have your own verb for yourself. I'm definitely concerned with the speed that he's shown this season. It's not like he's been awful. He's been getting good finishes, but he hasn't had like top of the line speed where he's going to get out front and dominate over guys like Larson, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, Denny Hammond, Brad Keselowski. We just haven't seen that from him yet, which is a concern, but I will say this, if Kevin Harvick can't get it done this week, it's probably time to give him the Kyle Busch treatment that we did last year, where at the beginning of the year, we're like, yeah, it's Kyle Busch, he'll figure it out. But he never really figured it out until that one race at Texas, and then Bristol was a different story because that's a very unique track. But Kyle Busch just was not his old self. He was not a dominator because we didn't have practice, and we know we still don't have practice, so my stance on Kyle Busch hasn't shifted until we have practice. Once we get practice, I'll be more higher on Kyle Busch, but since we don't now, I just have to continue having that same stance. And if Kevin Harvick can't get it done, it's not due to no practice, because we saw him do great without practice last year, but he might have just fell off a little bit, or the Stewart-Haas cars just don't have the same speed that they had last year. They no longer have that advantage. So if Kevin Harvick cannot get it done this week, it's definitely time to sound the alarm bells, because there is something seriously wrong, because Atlanta is his track and he dominates pretty much every single time we are here. But you guys get the idea. Numbers are fantastic. League of his own at Atlanta. It's just the recent numbers we've seen from Kevin Harvick are certainly concerning, so I won't say he's my favorite play in the slate. I'll have exposure to him in tournaments. Don't think you have to play him in cash games, because there's some other options that are cheaper than Kevin Harvick that I think even have better chances of dominating today from what we've seen so far this season and the later part of last year and the speed that they've shown. So Harvick is definitely in play for tournaments for me, but that price tag might keep me off of him in cash games. But I mean, if it's old Harvick this week, he should put on an absolute clinic. And then dropping down to a guy that I just really haven't been playing much recently after I finally figured out that it's time to stop playing Kyle Busch without practice. It's the Candyman, Kyle Busch, $10,700. He's starting back in 19th, so he's a very appealing place differential play, because I could very well see him in the top 5. He's actually had some decent runs this year, and at Atlanta last year, he was actually a pretty strong car in that race, and that's when we did not have practice. He came out strong, and the Joe Gibbs cars as a whole actually looked pretty darn good. Hamlin, Truex, Kyle Busch, even Eric Jones before he had that tire go down were all looking really strong in that race in the daytime, which they have been performing better at. So I don't think Kyle Busch is a terrible play here. I'm actually kind of looking to play him a little bit. He did finish second last year's race. Actually picked up a good amount of fast laps as well. And this is typically a pretty good track for Kyle Busch. He's usually decent at managing his tires. An average finish of 6.8 here, 2 top 5s. Not really been much of a lap leader though. The fast laps have been there for Kyle Busch, but even then it still hasn't been much of a domination from Kyle Busch. But the finishes are good, 2nd, 6th, and 7th recently, and at these track types. I know he doesn't have those dominator points that guys like Kevin Harvick, Larson, Keselowski, Hamlin have. Only 10.8 laps left per race and 11.3 fast laps, and only has 1 win, which isn't terrible. But he's got all the top 5s. He's right only behind Kevin Harvick in top 5s recently at these track types, which does include Darlington, Homestead, and all the other 1.5 tracks and Auto Club as well. But the numbers have been good for him. He just isn't picking up those dominator points, which really is what you need at these price points. But starting in 19th, I think he could be a top 5 contender, and I'd actually be surprised if he's not a top 5 contender here. The problem is we're getting dominator points from him to be a better play than a guy like Kyle Larson, Kevin Harvick, Keselowski, Hamlin. You can play him in addition to one of those guys starting closer to the front. If you are playing Kyle Busch, it's probably a pretty good idea to roster him with a guy starting closer to the front, like Martin Truex Jr., which would actually make sense, because if you're playing both Truex and Kyle Busch, you're probably hoping Joe Gibbs nailed the setup, so you could even throw Denny Hammond in there as well. But I don't hate Kyle Busch. I don't love him either, but for where he's starting in 19th and he's not over the moon expensive, I don't mind having some exposure to Busch this week and pairing up with a guy starting closer to the front, especially if he has another fast car like we saw last year at Atlanta. And now dropping to a guy that's might be my favorite play in the slate, it's Kyle Larson at $10,400. He is starting 6th, and I think there's a very good chance Kyle Larson can win this race. My projections actually like him to win this race right above Kevin Harvick, and he's at a fast car this year. And in Sal's video, I mentioned how he went to the back like 3 times last week and still went his way to the front and actually had a pretty decent day, scored over 50 DraftKings points, but he was originally going to start 2nd last week. He went to the rear before the start of the race. He got all the way back up front. Then he had a speeding penalty, had to go back to the back. Got back up front again, had another penalty, had to go to the back, and then he went back up front once again. Kyle Larson has a super fast car, and he had another high tire wear 1.5 mile track that we were at this year, Homestead. Kyle Larson, he had a fantastic race there. It was one of the best cars in the field. Then the next mile and a half track at Las Vegas, which isn't super comparable to Atlanta because it's not really high tire by any means, but still, he had the best car there, dominated, had a really good race, and this is a good track for Larson. I know he doesn't have the greatest finishes in the world, but he led over 140 laps the last time he was at Atlanta, and you got to keep in mind, I say this every single week, but that was in a Chip Ganassi car, which is not awful equipment, but it's certainly not Hendrick Motorsports, and in this 5 car, I honestly think Kyle Larson could be the champion this year. I think he's got the best car so far. He's super fast each and every single week. And if he did not go to the back at the beginning of the race last week, I think there's a decent chance Larson could have led like 200 some laps. He had a really fast car last week, and I think he brings another fast car here. I think you can play him in cash games, which is why I said I don't think you have to play Kevin Harvick in cash games this week. I know the numbers at Atlanta look good for Harvick, but from what we've seen this year and recently, Kyle Larson looks like the guy to beat right now, and I think he brings a super fast car, so get up front, lead laps, dominate at some point. I am definitely all in Kyle Larson this year, as of right now, until he proves me wrong, because Larson looks fantastic. So I'm going to ride the hot hand here. I know it's a smaller sample size compared to these other guys that have like 16 races under their belt, and Kyle Larson only has 3, but he's averaging the most DraftKings points per race, the best average finish, the best running position, the best driver rating, the most fast laps, and some of the most laps led. Again, I realize it's a 3-race sample size, so obviously the numbers are going to be better because he hasn't had his chance to have like a bad race or wreck out yet. So again, a bit skewed there, but I've loved what I've seen from Kyle Larson so far, and I think he makes the case for being the best dominator play in the entire slate, even though the price has risen a little bit. And next up is Brad Keselowski, who's actually been very, very good at Atlanta. If you're looking at the previous optimal lineups, it's pretty much Kevin Harvick and Brad Keselowski in every single one. This has been a very good track for Keselowski. Last year, he did have a speeding penalty, which kind of hurt him a little bit, but he ended up kind of saving his day and didn't have like the greatest day fantasy-wise, but it wasn't terrible either. But he's averaging 60.3 DraftKings points per race here, which is the 3rd best of all drivers. 2nd best average finish, tied with Truex at 5.2. 2 wins, which again is tied with Kevin Harvick, who already has 2 like we mentioned earlier, but some overall pretty strong numbers for Brad Keselowski. He won the race in 2019 and finished 2nd in 2018 to Kevin Harvick. The problem with Brad Keselowski is at these types of tracks, he usually runs pretty well, has one of the best average finishes, best average running positions, and things like that. If we want to look at the 2020, 21 and a half tracks, the numbers are pretty good for Keselowski. It's just those dominator points is not something he typically gets too much. Now at short flat tracks, that's when I usually have a lot of interest in Brad Keselowski because he's one of the main dominators. But as you can see, only 12.8 laps led per race and 15.7 fast laps at these track types last year. Not that that's terrible, but at $10,200 starting 4th, we're going to need him to get up front. But at Atlanta specifically, at a track where there's a lot of tire wear and Keselowski's pretty good at managing his tires here, he has performed pretty well. So I don't hate Keselowski in tournaments. Wouldn't get there in cash games personally, but I do like what I've seen from Keselowski. He had a decent race here last year, rebounded well after he had that speeding penalty. So yeah, I like the price tag. He was a little bit cheaper last year, which made him a lot easier to fit in. I want to say he was in the 8K range last year. If I remember correctly, I think Ryan Blaney was as well, which is a massive mispricing now. Unfortunately, he's above 10K now, so I think it's an appropriate price. But he's a fine tournament play, but I'm not super over the moon about Brad Keselowski this week. But as I always say, you can't full fade Keselowski because he's one of those guys that's going to stick around the entire race, and you're going to kick yourself for not having it. Usually like at least 10% Keselowski because he always seems to find his way up front at some point. And rounding out our top 10, we have the pole sitter Denny Hammond at $10,000. And the pole sitter during the COVID era has definitely not been the best thing in the world to win a roster. Even last week with Brad Keselowski, like I was pretty sure Keselowski was going to lead the majority of that first stage, and it just didn't happen. Denny Hammond actually took the lead over him. It is no guarantee that Hammond is going to come out here and lead the entire first stage. Now, if he does, and if he leads like 100 laps, yeah, that's going to be pretty darn good from a fantasy perspective. And when the competition caution comes out, people aren't going to stay out and take track position. They're going to come down and get tired. So if Hammond can keep the lead and then have a nice pit stop and come out front and have a fast car, yeah, there's a chance he could dominate the first stage, which would probably put him in the optimal lineup at that price point as long as he stays within the top 5, top 10, which I would assume Denny Hammond would do. Last year he had a pretty good car. I believe he finished 5th in that race, and I'm just a little concerned about playing the pole sitter because right beside him we have Martin Truex Jr., who's a little bit cheaper, and I like Martin Truex Jr. more than Denny Hammond this week. Now the problem is at the beginning, Hamlin's going to have the preferred lane, and the guy starting up top is usually going to get left in the dust a little bit because it's not as great of a restart spot. But at some point, I think a guy like Truex or Kyle Larson can take over, and without having practice or qualifying or anything, if Hamlin's team doesn't nail the setup and they don't lead any laps, it's not going to be a good play at $10,000. Now, I like Denny Hammond. He was pretty good at the high tire tracks last year, second in average green flag speed, only behind Chase Elliott. Was very good at the Darlington races last year, which is a comparable track to Atlanta Motor Speedway. But I do have some concerns here because I do like some other guys better at their price points and for where they're starting, but I'll definitely have exposure to Denny Hamlin. I'm not sure you have to play him in cash games, as scary as that sounds. I wouldn't fault you for playing him in cash games. I'm still not sure what I'm going to do yet as I'm recording this on Thursday. Usually I record these on Friday, so I'm a day ahead of schedule here, so I haven't had as much time to ponder lineups. Now, I do know when I ran my projections, Denny Hamlin did pop up in a few, and I only ran like 10 lineups just to see he was popping up, and Denny Hamlin was popping up in there, so he is definitely playable. He's not a fade by any means. It's just the pole sitters have been a bit concerning, but if we look at his numbers at these track types, I mean, they're obviously pretty darn good. Over 50 DraftKings points per race, 3 wins, 8 top 5s, 10 top 10s, and some of the most laps led and fast laps. So I wouldn't be surprised if Denny Hamlin has a pretty strong race here. I know he's got a couple of bad finishes here, which he did have some issues, so it skews his average finish, but overall the numbers aren't too bad for Denny Hamlin, and if he can lead a decent majority of that first stage, or even just half the first stage and get a good finish, that's not that bad at his price point. He's not that hard to fit in either. So I like Hamlin in all formats. Not sure if he's a cash game lock for me because Martin Truex Jr. is at only $9,600, and you got Ryan Blaney who's cheap as well. Even Chase Elliott's a little bit cheaper, which sounds a bit crazy. They all offer you a little bit more place differential upside, but I do think Hamlin's a pretty decent play. Then diving into this 9K range, we have surprisingly Chase Elliott. He's usually around $11,000, so just because of the price point, I'll tell you right now, I'm in on Chase Elliott this week. I know he hasn't been a main dominator here at Atlanta, only one top 5 in the past 5 races, but at some point or another, Chase Elliott is going to dominate a race at Atlanta, and I would not be surprised if it was this one. He's just been a bit unlucky to start the season. I know I keep playing him, and he just keeps having issues where he spins, or he gets damaged, or he has to go to the back. It just kind of keeps screwing things up, but he's still at a fast car, and at below $10,000 for a guy of his caliber, I mean, it's going to be hard not to play him. He was last year's pole sitter. I believe he led the first 25 or 26 laps or whatever it was. Never got back up front. It was just Truex and Harvick for the rest of the day, and Clint Boyer. Kind of forgot about him since he's retired in the booth now. But Clint Boyer was also one of the main dominators in that race. But Chase Elliott below 10K, I don't see how you don't want to play him at these track types last year. Pretty good. I could read you guys the numbers, but just pause and take a look if you want, because it's just kind of boring to talk about all the numbers here. But yeah, last year, the 1.5 mile tracks, he was very good. He was first in average green flag speed at these track types last year at the high tire tracks. So yeah, I like Chase Elliott. Below 10K, it's like, yeah, sign me up for sure. I'm not sure I'd play him in cash games, but in tournaments, yeah, for sure. I think he's a fringe cash play. You can play him in cash. I wouldn't fault you for that. I don't think I'm going to go that route. I think I'd rather just play Denny Hammond because he's in the pool. But I mean, yeah, that price tag is amazing for a guy like Chase Elliott. So definitely sign me up for some Chase in tournaments this week. And there's also a fringe cash play as well. Now, Martin Truex Jr., $9,600. I believe he was $9,600 last year, and I think he was starting 11th or 9th though. But he was one of the best guys to roster. He was second in average green flag speed, only behind Kevin Harvick. The guy was fast. He had a very, very good car, and I would not be surprised if he won this race. My 2 favorite picks to win this race, I posted it on Sal's video if you guys haven't watched that yet. It's Kyle Larson and Martin Truex. I like these guys a lot this week. Truex is pretty much second in most categories at this track in the stats, only behind Kevin Harvick in all of them, but 3 top 5s, one of the best running positions, tied for the second best average finish with Brad Keselowski, the second best drive rating, the second most DraftKings points per race. And anytime NASCAR goes to a 1.5 mile track, we have to have interest in Martin Truex Jr. because that's his bread and butter. Also pretty good at these high tire tracks. And like I was saying earlier, a long time ago when we were talking about Kyle Busch, the Joe Gibbs racing cars were very, very strong in this race last year, including Truex, who was the best of them all. So, yeah, I like Truex quite a bit. I think he's a very, very strong play. I think you can play him in cash games. You can play him alongside Denny Hammond. I don't think that's out of the equation either. So, I like Truex in all formats. He won last week's race, and he was only $10,100 last week. And I was screaming in my, not literally screaming, but I was shouting from the rooftops. I was like, don't forget about Martin Truex Jr. today because no one's talking about him. Like, I heard not one person talking about Truex last week, and he ended up only being 11% owned, and I was double the field on that, and he obviously won the race and had a really good day, and you needed him to be optimal. So, I mean, I know he's not going to be low owned this week. He's going to be very high owned. I assume he's going to be one of the more high owned dominators in the entire slate, but I'm definitely in on him here. I know people don't usually like starting the guy in second place because they'd rather play the pole sitter, and at that point, you're just double stacking the front row, but I like Truex a lot, and I like him more than Denny Hammond in a 1v1 situation as well. So Love Trudex, sign me up for him this week. It was also one of the best cars at the high tower tracks last year as well. Then dropping down to Logano, not a huge fan of Logano this week, but the price is nice. So I'm going to be playing him strictly because of that price point, because it's very easy to fit him in as like a third or even fourth dominator if you want to get crazy. I know he's starting close to the front. I'd rather play Truex. I'd probably rather play Hamlin as well. But I wouldn't be surprised if Logano is probably running second after the restart of the race, because I feel like Truex might fall back a spot or two just because of where he's going to be starting. So wouldn't surprise me if Logano had a chance to lead laps early on, but I don't think he's going to hold off guys like Kyle Larson or Martin Truex Jr. if they happen to storm to the front, if Logano happened to get to the front. So I don't love Logano, but it's like he's bad at Atlanta by any means. He only has one top 5 recently, but 4 top 10s, and actually a decent chunk of lap slide and fast laps as well. Now, last year's race, he ended up finishing 10th, but it wasn't a great race for him because I think he had some damage on pit road, so I think he had made an abbreviated stop, which, not abbreviated, elongated spot or a second stop. I forget exactly what it was. He didn't have the greatest race in the world, but it's still Joey Logano, one of the best drivers in the field. He had a good race last week, which I know doesn't mean much for this week's race, but yeah, I think Logano's the price point is what draws you in here. There's not place differential upside or anything to draw you in. You're just mainly playing him because of the price point and his ability to dominate races. And at these track types last year, obviously he was pretty darn good. Just doesn't really pick up the fast laps last year, which was really surprising because if you look at these numbers on the screen, as long as you guys can see, he only averaged 8.6 fast laps per race at the mile and a half tracks last year, which is behind every single driver we've talked about and the next 2 drivers we're going to talk about as well. And it's almost behind Tyler Reddick and Kurt Busch as well. So wasn't really super fast at these track types. He typically picks up good finishes, but yeah, Logano's fine because of the price, but I'm not like super in love with Logano this week, but I will have exposure in tournaments. But Ryan Blaney, $9,200. You guys already know what I'm going to say, but yes, I like Ryan Blaney a ton this week. He's just too cheap for no reason. I'm not sure why he's this cheap. He was in last year's optimal lineup at, I believe, $8,500. I wish he was $8,500 this week. Unfortunately not, but still really low at $9,200. I think he was $9,300 last week, starting in 8th, and we saw him storm to the front, was a dominator in stage 1, and he had a very good race. Faded a little bit at the end, but he's back to normal. I know the beginning of the season for Ryan Blaney wasn't obviously great by any means, and he was starting in the back, but the past 2 races for him have been pretty good, back to normal. So yeah, I'm definitely on Ryan Blaney. He was the kind of the premier driver at the 1.5 mile tracks last year, pulling up these numbers. 55.8 DraftKings points per race, which is only behind Kyle Larson, which I know this has a 2021 data set in there as well, which is including the Homestead and Las Vegas race. So excluding Kyle Larson because it's a 2-race sample size, Ryan Blaney averaged the most DraftKings points per race at the mile and a half tracks last year, the best running position. Didn't have the wins to show for it, but 6 top 5, some of the most lap slide and fast laps. Was first in average green flag speed at the mile and a half tracks as well. Now, he was better at the low tire wear tracks than he was at the high tire wear tracks, but last year at Atlanta, Ryan Blaney still had a pretty strong car, and like I mentioned earlier, he did make the optimal lineup here in a similar position last season, just a little bit cheaper. So yeah, I like Ryan Blaney quite a bit. He was top 5 in average green flag speed at Atlanta last season, and he finished in 4th place. So at $9,200 starting in 10th, you can play him in cash games, you can play him in tournaments, you can play him in whatever. I think he's one of the best plays in the entire slate. I know that's a big surprise coming from me, but he's been great the past 2 weeks, and I'm willing to go back to the well once again. And then the guy who's just the ultimate GPP play here, it's William Byrne at $9,000. He's starting 9th, and he's definitely going to be the lowest owned driver in this range because everyone's going to play Ryan Blaney, Truex, Chase Elliott. Logano will probably be the second highest owned, but even then he's got some pretty high dominator potential. So William Byrne, he just doesn't have that name value that the other guys have in this price range. But the thing is, at a similar track in Homestead, another high tire wear track, William Byrne led around 100 laps and dominated and won that race. He's also in a Hendrick car, which has been very fast to start the season. So if you want the ultimate tournament play here, but should be probably single-digit ownership, I don't hate getting some William Byrne, and maybe he won't be that low owned, but it should be at least close to around 10% owned. If he's lower than that, I like being higher than the field because I would not be surprised from a William Byrne top 5 performance here. Now, I know the numbers don't look great for Byrne here at Atlanta, running position of 25.6 and a finish of 22.7. You got to remember last year, though, he got into an issue where I believe he had a tire go down or he hit the wall or something like that, but he had a pit, did not have a caution flag, so he kind of got screwed, went several laps down, and I had a decent chunk of him, close to 25% exposure to him last year, which he was very popular that day. I want to say he was close to 30% owned, but he finished 33rd, so that will skew the numbers a little bit. And then the 17th and 18th place finish the past couple of races before that aren't super impressive either, but you got to keep in mind it's a new season. He's got some more experience under his belt, and at these track types last year, Wasn't too bad for Willie B. Running position of 12.3, had a win, 2 top 5s, 6 top 10s. That one was not last week, a couple weeks ago at Homestead. It does take into account some 2021 numbers, but yeah, Byron should have a decently fast car. Would not be surprised if he hangs inside the top 10 today, and if you think he can potentially get up front with some lucky track position, or just he brings a super fast car, gets a top 5 finish, I don't hate the idea of having some William Byron, but definitely not going to play him in cash games. And then dipping into this 8K range, I think we have a nice tournament play in William Byron's teammate Alex Bowman at $8,800 here, starting back in 14th. So he's a bit safer since he's starting further back, and I would much rather play Alex Bowman over William Byron this week just because of that, starting 5 spots further back. Now I know his numbers at Atlanta aren't that great, so I'm hoping this keeps his ownership pretty low because he has no top 10 finishes recently, no top 5s, and only 2 top 15s with 0 laps led into fast laps. But the thing is, Alex Bowman has been pretty good at the high tire wear tracks. Back in the day when we had Chicagoland, he dominated one a race there. He dominated one a race at Auto Club when we had Auto Club. Unfortunately, those 2 races are gone now. But still at the Darlington races, he was pretty good, and I think he should be a top 10 guy here at Atlanta, and I would not be surprised if he could sneak inside a top 5 as well, and maybe even be a super sneaky dominator here. So I'm hoping the Atlanta numbers keep people off Alex Bowman, but he was top 5 in average game flag speed at the high tire wear tracks last year, and overall his numbers at these track types, and specifically mile and a half tracks, they're pretty good. Now he has some bad finishes mixed in because he either hit the wall, blew a tire, or had an issue, so his average finish at 15.1 is a bit skewed, but he has one of the best average running positions in the field at 9.4, 3 top 5 finishes, some of the most laps led and fast laps as well. So I like Alex Bowman quite a bit in tournaments. If you have to play him in cash games, like say he was a last piece fit for some reason, I wouldn't be against that. But if you don't already have Austin Cindric, I'd rather go $200 below. So speaking of Austin Cindric at $8,600 starting back in 39th, I think he's pretty much a cash game lock here. I know he's an Xfinity driver, but he's pretty much the premier Xfinity driver these days, and he is not going to be in a junk car by any means. He is getting a Penske car, the 33 car, which is what he ran at the Daytona 500, which I know is not a comparable track by any means, and the equipment doesn't really matter too much at Daytona, but he showed he was able to run up front. He was like top 5 with his teammates, Keselowski, not Blaney because he wrecked out early on, but Joey Logano, like, he was capable, and we know the guy is a very good driver. He's had some decent numbers at Xfinity races in Atlanta before, and starting all the way back in 39th, he cannot lose you any points. And I was looking at where Vegas had him projected to finish, and they have him right around that Stenhouse Bubba Wallace range, which is kind of sitting around 15th to 17th place. So if Austin Cindric happened to finish right around where Vegas is projecting him to finish, or at least the odds where he could finish, that's not that bad. That's around 50 to 55 DraftKings points on Sunday, which you will take all day $8,600. Now, he doesn't have the ceiling of a guy like Bowman who could potentially get up front and lead laps, or a guy like William Byron, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, but the floor is super high and the ceiling's pretty high as well. Like, so let's say he snuck in a top 10 finish. I don't think that's likely, but it's not. He's not in a junk car any means. If he can sneak in a top 15, he's going to crush that price tag on DraftKings. So if you're playing cash games this week, I think you're going to have to stick Austin Cindric in there, even if you don't want to, but he could very easily gain close to 20-some spots in this race, which is exactly what we want from fantasy, and especially in cash games as well. So I'm definitely going to be in on Austin Cindric this week, despite him being pretty expensive for an Xfinity driver, but as you can see, he's got that 33 car for Team Penske, so it's going to be pretty darn good equipment. Not saying he's going to be running up front with guys like Logano, Keselowski, and Ryan Blaney as teammates, but I think he could be close to Matt DiBenedetto's playing field this weekend. And then we have another massive place differential play here in Tyler Reddick, $8,400 starting back in 29th. He's always a bit of a risky play because I swear he always happens to have an issue. He either runs really well, or he's trying to run really well and then he has an issue because he either gets a bit too aggressive. So that's the downside of Tyler Reddick. But there's a lot of upside here starting all the way back in 29th. He finished in 16th here last year. It's only a 1-race sample size that we have to work with. But if we expand this to the past 16 races at these track types, his numbers have average finish of 15.4, running position of 16.4, 3 top 5s, 5 top 10s, and 9 top 15s. History would suggest that he could gain us close to 15 to 20 spots in this race, and starting all the way back in 29th, that is good enough for me. He's a massive place differential play, and I think he's a very, very strong play in this slate. Now, I'm assuming because he's priced right beside Austin Cindric, that his ownership might be a little bit lower than it should. So I think if you want to get off some Cindric chalk, you could pivot right to Tyler Reddick, who I don't think is going to be super low owned, but he'll definitely be lower owned than Austin Cindric. So I think both are phenomenal place differential plays, and it's kind of as simple as that. Also, Homestead, another 1.5 mile high tire wear track. I know it's a little bit more unique because of how you can ride the top like that over there, and Tyler Reddick does that exceptionally well. But he finished second in that race, and he also finished in the top 5 the last Homestead race as well. So definitely in on Tyler Reddick here. I think you can play him in cash games. And then we have Kurt Busch at $8,300 starting 11th, and I'm going to be back in on Kurt Busch this week. I know it didn't work out too well last week. He looked strong at the beginning of the race, kind of fell off a bit, but we can certainly go back in on Kurt Busch as a nice tournament play because Austin Cindric and Tyler Reddick, they're going to soak up the majority of this ownership here. I also think people are going to be on Bowman and Matt DiBenedetto, so Kurt Busch should be the odd man out here, but I think that'd be a mistake because Atlanta is a very good track for Kurt Busch, averaging over 50 DraftKings points per race here, an average finish of 5.6, a drive rating over 100, 2 top 5s, 5 top 10s, and that's what I always say about Kurt Busch. Is he a super exciting play because he always starts closer to the front? No, but he's also very consistent, and sometimes you need those nice boring plays in your lineup because they're not going to sink your lineups. They're going to keep him steady, and they also have some upside as well. Now, I know he's averaging 23.2 laps led here over the past 5 races, but I don't think we should expect Kurt Busch to be a dominator. But I think he can be a top 10 guy, and at these track types last year, typically always in the top 10, 11 top 10s in the past 16 races. So I like Kurt Busch in tournaments. And actually last year in this Atlanta race, he had to start the race with a pass-through penalty, so he ended up going a lap down, but then ended up getting himself back into the free pass position and ended up having a pretty strong race. He finished in 6th place, and he finished in 3rd place in 2019 and 8th place in 2018. So I think we could see a similar performance here from Kurt Busch, and I like him quite a bit in tournaments to get off of that Cindric and Reddick chalk. Then MDB, don't look at the recent performance here at Atlanta because the majority of these numbers are coming in pretty junk equipment. I know last year he didn't have a good race either, though, finishing 25th, but for the most part, he's a top 15 guy at these track types, and I see no reason why that can't be the same this weekend. So MDB starting in 20th place. He's a fine play. I don't love it just because I'd rather get up to Austin Cindric and Tyler Reddick, so I'm not sure how much I'm going to be in this price range. Obviously going to have to get exposure to these guys because they do have upside. I'm not going to be 100% Cindric and Reddick, so you're going to have to differentiate a little bit. So I'll have a little bit of MDB, but I don't think it's going to be anything too crazy, but I think he's a fine play. Then Eric Almirola, $8,000. He's starting 16th. Probably going to finish right around where he starts. His history at Atlanta, about 15th place, which is, again, like really close to where he's starting. But he's typically in the top 15, 4 top 15s recently, and a top 10 finish. But I think we should probably expect him around 10 to 15th place, which is not bad. It's just not a whole lot of upside for where he's starting. Last year at these track types, average finish, again, right around where he's starting. So he should be a top 15 contender, but outside of that, I don't think he's an amazing play, but I'll have a little bit of exposure just to get different because I feel like him and Kurt Busch will be the lowest owned guys in this price range, maybe even Alex Bowman. Then dropping down to the 7K range, we have Christopher Bell at $7,800. He is starting in 8th, and I do have interest because I don't think he's going to be too popular for where he's starting. And then right below him, you can get Cole Custer 27th, and Ryan Newman should be very popular, starting all the way back in 28th. So can't imagine a lot of people are going to be on Christopher Bell, but you got to keep in mind, he is in that Joe Gibbs car now, and Eric Jones, looking at his numbers at Atlanta, which is probably a good comparison, he had some decent numbers. Average finished at 15th, running position of 14.5, had a top 10 and 3 top 15s. Had the issue last year, which is going to skew those stats a little bit, where he finished 28th because of the tire, but he had a potential top 10 car there. And Christopher Bell, he's an uber talented driver. We've seen that so far this season. He looks pretty darn good, even has a win under his belt. So wouldn't be surprised if Christopher Bell can hang in that top 10 all day. And the Joe Gibbs cars last year at this track were very, very good. So I don't hate Christopher Bell in tournaments. Wouldn't go there in cash games, obviously, but you can hope he can stay within the top 8, top 10, maybe sneak into the top 5, pick up some fast laps. I don't think Christopher Bell is the worst play in the world. And then, oh boy, Cole Custer once again, man. He just keeps being a good play because he keeps having good races, then he finishes bad, which makes him a good play the next week because where he starts is right around where he finishes. So gives a lineup formula. So unfortunately, we might have to go back to the well here. Now, the good thing is, if you don't want to play him, DraftKings did price him up about $1,000 this week, so he's no longer a nice value play because he was sitting in that below 6K range. Now he's close to $8,000, so it's definitely not a layup now. You have to think about it, and you have to make it an emphasis to get him in your lineup, but I still like him a little bit because, again, he's in a Stewart-Haas racing car, which I know hasn't been great this year, but they did show a little bit of life last week, which I know is at a different aero package. But even then, Cole Custer at the last mile and a half track, he was running inside the top 10 before he had a tire issue where he ended up finishing in the 20s, but he was in the top 10. Like, it's not like he's been complete junk this year. And even last week, he was running inside the top 15, and he was actually gaining some ground later on in the race, and then he ended up having an issue where he had to, I forget exactly what happened. I think he had to pit, but he ended up killing all of our days. I had multiple lineups in the top 10, and he was in all of them, and it synced it down, so that sucked, unfortunately. But it just can't keep happening, right? So I'm willing to go back to the well here. Again, not as appealing because the price came up, but looking at his numbers last year at similar track types, for the most part, he's typically a top 20 guy. And the numbers weren't super impressive, only had one top 10 finish and 5 top 15s, but 8 top 20s, running position just inside the top 20. He should be able to gain you close to 10 spots on Sunday, which is not that bad for where he's starting, but again, the price is priced up a little bit this week, so it's not as appealing. Then Bubba Wallace, $7,400, starting 15th, kind of an play here. I know he's pretty much got a Joe Gibbs car. I wouldn't say it's quite up to the level of guys like Busch, Truex, Hamlin, or even Christopher Bell, but it's still not a bad car, and he was actually looking really good last week. He was in, 7th or 6th place, and then for some reason they decided not to pit. I have no idea why they did not pit. It was a stupid decision because I really think Bubba Wallace could have got his first top 10 finish of the year. For some reason, they stayed out, which gained them, 5, 6, 7 spots, only to lose it all because they didn't have fresh tires. Don't understand that pit decision. Looking at the recent numbers here, it would make no sense to do that because it's a totally different car. He's in much better equipment now, so I don't even want to waste time looking at the numbers. But as long as they don't make a stupid decision like not pitting once again, which you're definitely not going to do at Atlanta, so I don't think you have to worry about that, I think he can be a top 15 guy. I don't think a lot of people are going to play him because of where he's starting, but I don't hate him in tournaments. I wouldn't say he's my favorite play, but he's an okay tournament play. Then Austin Dillon, I do like him in tournaments. Obviously wouldn't play him in cash games starting at 13th, but as I always say, Austin Dillon is a top 15 machine at these mile-and-a-half racetracks. Looking at his numbers at Atlanta, they haven't been super impressive, but he does have 3 top 15 finishes and did finish 11th last year in this race. And looking back at the recent track type form, average finish of 13.3, which is right around where he's starting. Has a win, 3 top 5s, 6 top 10s, and 12 top 15s. So I assume he's going to finish close to where he starts, but there is top 10 upside for Austin Dillon. And I wouldn't be surprised if he could score 30 or so fantasy points on Sunday, which is not that bad at $7,300. And then Ryan Newman, $7,100. He is starting 28th. He is in play only because of his starting position. He absolutely synced lineups last week, which was really shocking because his numbers at Phoenix weren't that bad. He did have a couple of decent races so far to start the season, so it was actually kind of surprising to see him run that bad. Assuming things get fixed up this week, he could gain you around 8 spots. Again, not super impressive, but he's got an average running position of 14th here, and he did finish 14th in last year's race at Atlanta, and he finished 13th the year before that. I know if we're looking at the track type form, he's got a running position of around 20th place, similar to his average finish. No top 5s, 1 top 10, and 7 top 15s. He's going to hover around that 15th to 20th place range, which not super exciting, but at his price point for where he's starting, that does make him a pretty decent play. So I like Newman in all formats. I think you can play him in cash games as well. Erik Jones, I'm a bit indifferent on because of the 2.5 races we've seen so far. The one at the high tire track at Homestead, he kind of sucked, finishing 27th place. But then at Las Vegas, a low tire wear track, he finished inside the top 10, right, in 10th place. So it's kind of up and down there, and I'm not really sure what to expect out of Erik Jones because we know if he was in the old 20 car at $7,000 starting in 22nd, he'd probably be one of the highest owned drivers on the slate. Now that he's in the 43 car, it definitely changes things because that's certainly a step down, but he put up some decent numbers at Atlanta when he was in the 20 car. The problem is, let's look at the numbers that Bubba Wallace put up. So his finishes, he was in 21st, 27th, and 32nd. Now, I would say Erik Jones is a better driver than Bubba Wallace, so I feel like it's definitely we can get upgraded numbers from then. So let's just say he could be a top 20 guy, which I think is fair. I think Erik Jones can sit in that 15th to 20th place range. Starting 22nd, he could pick up a couple spots and get a decent amount of finishing position points. So don't hate Erik Jones, but it's definitely buyer beware because he's in that 43 car, which we know is definitely not the best. And then Chase Briscoe, $6,800, starting in 24th. He is a fine place differential play. At Homestead, he got trapped a couple laps down for a while, so his average running position is going to look not that great. If we pull up the 2-race sample size at these tracks, as you can see, running position at 24.7, but the average finish at 19.5, I think is a better indicator of what we should expect from Chase Briscoe. I think he's going to have a top 20 car. He's in Stewart-Haas equipment, which typically is good. So far this year, it hasn't been the greatest, but starting 24 to $6,800, he should get a top 20 finish, which is just fine at his price point. So I like him for PD purposes. Same goes for Rosh Chastain. Looking at his numbers at Atlanta, again, is just a waste of time, kind of like MDB, because he used to be an absolute junk equipment. He's not going to put up these kind of numbers. He's in the 42 car now, which is what Kyle Larson used to drive, and I always say it, sound like a broken record. He's not going to put up Kyle Larson-like numbers, but Chastain is a good driver. Now, he is aggressive, so he can get himself in trouble, but he should be a top 15 contender at $6,600 starting in 21st, so he is certainly on my radar for cheap. Daniel Suarez, $6,500, starting 25th. I feel like he's getting a little bit up there in the price range. At the one high tire mile and a half track we've had so far this year, he did finish inside the top 15 in 14th place. We know he's kind of the third RCR car, which those are, I just kind of punched myself with those, and they're definitely capable of getting top 15s at the mile and a half track. So I think Suarez is a fine play. Wish he was a little bit cheaper, but he should be a top 20 contender here, which is fine compared to the other guys right below him that don't offer you too much place differential upside. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., $6,300, starting in 12th. Last week, he was only $5,500. Now, the risk was he was starting so far up front. I think he was either starting 11th or 13th that he would have to kind of hold his position or gain a few spots, and he did just that. He had a pretty good race, and he's had a good start to the season, actually been pleasantly surprising, and his numbers at Atlanta aren't that bad. Has an average running position of 14.9, has an average finish of 17.7. Also, something to keep in mind is that Atlanta is a pretty steep track, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is actually good at the steep track. So I think we can go right back to the well here at this price point for a guy that has top 15 upside at this price point. So I don't hate Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and I think the good times probably continue for Stenhouse outside of a wreck. I know at some point it's going to happen, but looking at his finishes at Atlanta, he's been in the top 25 out of the past 6 races, in the top 15 3 out of the past 6, and he did finish in 13th place here last year. So I don't hate Ricky Stenhouse Jr. at all. Michael Mcdowell, he's starting a little bit too far up for me to have too much interest. I know he's cheap, and I know he's starting 18th, but his numbers at Atlanta kind of suck. He doesn't even have a top 20 finish here, and looking at the overall. Looking at the specific numbers, 24th, 37th, and 24th, and at these track types last year, typically sat around 20th to 23rd place, so he's not a bad play. He did have 9 top 20 finishes. The problem is I wish he was starting in the 20s. Starting inside the top 20 definitely caps his upside. I'll probably have a sprinkle of Michael McDowell, but definitely not one of my favorite cheap guys this week, because we can find some other guys that offer us some place differential upside. And then Chris Buescher, kind of viewing him similar to Michael McDowell, but a little bit more upside. He did finish 9th here in 2019. The thing is, his numbers, he's kind of been a 20th someplace guy at Atlanta. He did have that one really good race, but besides that, hasn't been too good though. But he is typically a top 20 guy at these track types, and starting 17th at this price point, it makes him viable just because of the price. I feel like he might lose a couple of spots, but if he can hold his ground and finish around 15th to 20th place, that's not that bad at $6,000, because a lot of these guys are going to be lucky with a top 25. So wouldn't hate some Chris Buescher just because of the low price point. Ryan Preece, $5,800, kind of had his first sucky race of the season last week, but overall it's been a decent start to the season for Ryan Preece, and starting 23rd, I feel like there's a little bit of upside there. He can be a top 20 contender. For the most part, I'd assume he's going to run inside the top 25, below $6,000. He's viable just to get some different cheap guys down low, because you're not going to want to play 100% Anthony Alfredo, who I'll talk about in a little bit. Justin Haley, $5,600. I said last week that Justin Haley and James Davison were the only cheap drivers below the guys below Ricky Stenhouse Jr., like the scrub drivers. He was the only one. Him and James Davison were the only ones that I'd want to play. And I had around 10% Justin Haley, and he actually ended up having a good race. He was in the optimal lineup. So yeah, the problem is he's starting a little bit further up this time because of that decent race. He's starting in 26. He's not in a terrible car. He's in that 77 car for Spire, which I realize isn't the best team in the world, but they have some decent juice compared to these other teams down low, like Rick Ware Racing and Starcom and things like that. So I don't hate Justin Haley, but I'd much rather play Anthony Alfredo at $5,500, starting 32nd for Front Row Motorsports. They definitely have a bit better cars, and he can be a top 25 guy. Now, the 1 week, but Anthony Alfredo did have, 3 straight finishes in a row in the top 25. So starting 32nd at only $5,500, price below Justin Haley, starting 7 spots further up. I don't see why we wouldn't want to play Anthony Alfredo. He's my favorite cheap driver of the week, and I think you can certainly play him in cash games as well. And the same goes for Corey LaJoie. He hasn't had the greatest start to the season, but he's got top 25 upside. He's only $5,300. So if you want to make that 4-dominator lineup work, you're going to probably stick around this Corey LaJoie, Anthony Alfredo range. I don't even hate doubling up on these guys because they're just a little bit too cheap in my opinion. I think they should both be around $6,000. So you're definitely getting a nice discount on them. And after that, I would not recommend playing any of these guys this week. Sometimes I'll throw a couple percentages on them, but I think I might just X them out this week. So no Timmy Hill, Joey Gase, Davison, Bulicki, Quinn Howell, BJ McLeod, or Cody Ware for me this week, at least I think. As of right now, again, it's Thursday, so things can change, but I can't imagine I'm going to want to go below Corey LaJoie this week. But yeah, with that being said, guys, I think that's going to be it for the video. And this was a long one, too, close to 50 minutes, or right around 50 minutes. So if you made it all the way through, please let me know in the comments down below, because you guys rock if you made it all the way through. Man, that's a long long video. And like the video if you haven't already, if you found it helpful. Hit that subscribe button as well to get me closer to 8,000 subscribers, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out whenever the content goes live, or when I go live on Sundays as well. And if you don't follow me over on Twitter, Pennell16, getting close to 2K followers over there. Follow me on IG if you want. If you want to support the channel over on Patreon, link is down below for that. $10 a month to get access to all the content that I do each and every single week. It makes these free videos possible on YouTube. So if you want to help me out, I appreciate it very much. And if you want to sign up on Monkey Knife Fight to get a free money bonus up to $50, use code CPEN and use the link down below next to the monkey emoji and sign up and tell them I sent you. Again, that is code CPEN for a free money bonus up to $50 instant match. But that's going to be it, guys. Appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in next week's video or in the Sunday live stream if you happen to tune in. I'll see you.